Welcome to Pods with Posh and Paul, a podcast designed to inspire and challenge listeners through story, experience and insight. To face adversity, learn from suffering and discover how to embrace life with a heart filled with love and gratitude. We are so thrilled to have you journey with us and can't wait to share your stories. Join Sue O'Callaghan and Joanne Webb as we disrupt the theory that everyone has perfect lives.
It is a privilege to introduce today's guest. In 2011, aged just 21, her life changed beyond measure after a life-threatening car accident. She was in a coma for 3 weeks, a wheelchair for a year, and had to learn how to walk and talk again. It was an arduous and often painful journey to recovery, but with some solid support and a whole heap of love, she put in all the hard work to be here where she is today. And every day now, she still works on her mental and physical health and lives life with a heart full of gratitude. So not a survivor, and definitely a thriver, we are so pleased to welcome Kelly Munford.
Kelly, thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome. Nice to be with you.
So Kelly, we are trying to give our listeners some inspiration and some tools on how to live their very best life. And you have got the most amazing Facebook page and you seem to live your very best life each and every day. Yeah?
I try to.
Good. However, you've got a really big story to tell. So could you just tell us what happened to you? It'll be 9 years ago now, won't it?
I fell asleep while driving. Was trapped in my car, unconscious on the Auckland motorway. The rescue team struggling to get me out. So 9 years on, I've created a magnificent life, thanks to my friend and family.
So Kelly, at the time you were 21 years old, is that right? Is there anything you remember about the accident at all?
Nope, I remember waking up in rehab saying, what happened? Why am I here?
And what kind of injuries did you have when you woke up?
A broken neck, a broken pelvis, and a traumatic brain injury.
So tell us a little bit about that recovery process. That must have been a long journey to recovery. Were you in hospital for a while?
I was in hospital for 8 weeks, and then the first rehab, I was bedridden for 3 months. So I was in the first rehab for 3 months, and then I started to walk again in the second rehab. I was there for 12 months.
And this was residential, was it, Kelly?
Laura Ferguson.
And there it was physiotherapy. What kind of rehab were you going through at the time?
Physio, occupational therapy, speech and language therapy.
So you had to learn to speak again as well?
Because I remember we had a conversation a few weeks ago and you remembered your entire life, didn't you? So it wasn't like you didn't have any amnesia, did you really? Apart from the actual crash itself, that's the only bit of the light of your life that you've lost, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
So you knew everything, so was it really frustrating having to learn how to do everything again?
Absolutely. I remember learning to swim, and I knew exactly what I was supposed to do. My body just wouldn't do it.
So the messages weren't going to your limbs, so you had to retrain all the neural pathways.
I think that would be one of the most frightening experiences for all of us, wouldn't it? That we have got a body that we normally take for granted. We don't have to think about what we do, what we say. To start to retrain a body and to think about every single thing you're having to do. So tell us a bit about the emotional journey that you went on. Did you find there were times did you feel depressed through it? Did you think that you were going to focus on just recovery and hope? You felt positive about it? It must have been quite dark times as well.
There were, but my dad was always there, and I was on depression pills for 3 years, but I figured I got myself into a mess. I needed to get myself out.
That sounds like a very positive response. You were lucky to have family around you at the time.
Absolutely.
And how long do you think that journey took you to the point where you felt as though you'd got your life back on track and you knew where you wanted to go?
It took over 5 years, I think.
It was a long recovery though, wasn't it? I mean, to go through everything you went through, you know, mind, body, soul, your poor body was put through quite a lot. And then to have to relearn how to do everything. And then you relearn how to do it, but then you have to get really good at it, don't you? So it's a process, isn't it?
Yeah.
I have to say that's absolutely remarkable, isn't it, to hear somebody's journey of 5 years recovery from an accident. Obviously you went out that evening or day and were just meeting, had you gone to meet friends? Or, and then that didn't happen, and then in an instant your life has changed, isn't it? In literally in a second.
I got a phone call saying that the family dog had died, and I was going to bury him the next morning in Taronga. So I was driving to Taronga at 3:30 a.m. and crashed at 4. So...
And then, so you were on the way down to the family, you were obviously upset, tired, and the tragic accident happened. And then, obviously your family came up to Auckland to be with you during your recovery. And you couldn't remember that the poor dog had died either, could you?
I said, what? Bookie died!
Oh, so you had to relive that upset again as well?
Yeah.
Just about.
And then I had been suffering an eating disorder, bulimia, for 7 years.
So tell us a little bit about that. What was that like, Kelly?
Awful. It ruined my life.
What age did you start suffering bulimia from? Because I know we've got
14.
lots of listeners that too struggle with bulimia. So from 14 years old.
Right up till 21.
Right, and that dominated your life because it does take over completely, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
What was that like as a 14-year-old? How did you have family support through that, or did you receive some professional
but
help?
I was just young and dumb. I went to psychiatrists and stuff, but when you're 14, you don't listen to that.
So you didn't feel as though it helped you. Did it give you tools and techniques to sort of work through and focus, something to focus on during that time?
Nope,
No.
It didn't help you.
not at all.
And do you think the bulimia came about from comparison to others, from poor body image, or was it bullying? Was there what do you think the main cause of it was?
Mixture of everything.
So what would you say to listeners today, 14, 16, 18-year-olds that are listening to this, who are suffering from bulimia, who want to overcome it but can't? What do you think a message of hope you can give to them?
The paleo diet saved my life.
Tell us a bit about the paleo diet.
You're avoiding sugar, which is is addictive, so it makes you prone to binging. Bulimia is, making yourself sick. So if you don't have that addiction, then you don't make yourself sick.
So because you're not doing those, because obviously with a lot of bulimics, they either don't eat, or when they do eat, they eat huge amounts and then they're sick, aren't they? That's kind of a pattern that we've heard that occurs. So you're saying with the paleo diet, you eat regularly, you don't binge eat, you don't have that them sugar highs, them sugar lows,
Yeah.
so therefore it's just more static and keeps your body...
Love it.
Yeah.
It's great advice, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because I know certainly we've got lots of young listeners in their teens that struggle with self-image, and I think, do you think social media plays a part in that today in terms of poor self-image, or do you think it's literally, for you, it was the addictive factor?
The addictive
It
factor.
wasn't social media at all, comparing
No.
yourself to others, because there's lots of different reasons, aren't there? People develop eating disorders, especially for girls, but more common now than ever for boys as well. So tell us a little bit about the journey you're on now, because I know you're in a completely different place to where you were 9 years ago in that journey of recovery. Tell us what you're doing now.
Living life to the fullest.
And what does that look like?
Riding my bicycle on the beach. do presentations.
And tell us a bit about the presentations. Who are you speaking to?
And teenagers all through the North Island.
So you go out to the schools to give them a presentation and you
I
give
go
inspiration?
to stadiums.
Oh, wow. So you're speaking to a lot of teenagers.
Mm.
And what's your message to the teenagers when you go and see them?
It's mainly making good choices. Mine is sleep before you drive.
Yeah. And so they see you as this person who's obviously rebuilt their life, and you know they don't want to have to go through a terrible car accident, do they? So you're there as that inspiration to go and tell them the perils of driving and things.
It's interesting, isn't it, how often we change our lives as a consequence of circumstances that happen to us. We come out of a broken relationship, we have an accident, we face some trauma or suffering, and then we turn our lives around. But Joe and I often talk about changing our lives before it comes to a critical point. And I think that you're giving teenagers an amazing opportunity to think about consequences of their actions and be responsible. Tell us a bit about the response that you get, the feedback you get from people you speak to.
A lot of them, they cry.
I'm sure they do. I'm sure they're really moved by your story.
And I like, it's all right.
Oh, you have to console them.
Yeah, it's all right.
And are you speaking to young drivers as well? Because you must make, you know, we learn in New Zealand, for listeners, we learn to drive at 16. It used to be 15, but many countries of the world, around the world, it's 17. So we're quite young, aren't we, learning to drive at 16?
Yeah.
Our frontal cortex is not fully developed at that stage in terms of being able to multitask. So what is the response of people that are already driving? Does it make them think about what they're doing?
It makes them think. They say that they've learnt a lot from my presentation.
Good. Because there's huge amounts of distractions as well when people are driving, especially now the likes of cell phones, you know. We've all been guilty of picking up a call or quickly viewing a text, and when you do it once and you think, that is just so not right, we shouldn't be doing things like that, should we? Because you're playing with your life every time you do something like that, aren't you?
Or somebody else's.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good point.
So you're speaking in the North Island, New Zealand?
Yeah.
You say you're speaking in stadiums. Where have you been speaking?
Bay Park in Tauranga, and Waitakere Trust Stadium, and Mount Smart Stadium.
Wow, that's huge for listeners overseas that don't know. They're big stadiums here, aren't they? And are they organised events where you're being invited to speak, or are you organising those events yourself?
No, they're all organised.
And I was listening to something that I was reading, one of your posts. Do you still get nervous when you go out to do your presentations?
Yeah, I do after 5 years. I still get nervous.
But you know, I love the fact that you get nervous but you still do it. You know, there's so many things that hold people back in life. This is another message for our listeners, because you know, there's always something to be nervous about, but sometimes that nervous energy actually gives you the energy to actually go out and do it, doesn't it? And it shows you care as well when you're nervous about something.
And I think it also makes you raw and real, doesn't it? Your vulnerability is what attracts people to you, and that you change your message all the time according to how you're feeling that day. But it's about courage, isn't it? I mean, you obviously are a very courageous person. You've rebuilt your life, and you've come to a place now where you're not just cycling on the beach, as you say, but you're putting what was a really awful experience into a situation where you're teaching people, you're training them, you're motivating, you're encouraging them, and really making them think about their own lives. I love it. I love the message that you're putting forward.
And also what I love, because you kind of you always talk about living your best life, don't you? And being grateful. So do you practice gratitude all the time?
Absolutely. As soon as I was grateful, everything changed.
I know, I love gratitude. It just fills my heart with joy, and this is the message that we try to teach the teenagers we work with, or anybody we work with, to be honest with you. The more you can be grateful for, the more you have to be grateful for, isn't it?
Yeah.
But how does that work for a listener that's really struggling right now with a broken relationship, or they failed their exams and they are struggling, they're suffering from depression, they're feeling really low, they don't want to get out of bed? How do you put into place that gratitude mindset?
I don't know.
Well, how did you start to be grateful? Where did it start for you?
I just Well, because my friend gave me a place to live, and so I had so much to be grateful for. I was sort of chucked in.
Yeah. But we'll take yourself back just before you moved in with your friend. Were you feeling, is that when you were feeling down? Is that when you were feeling depressed? Did you have anything to be grateful for then, or were you not practicing gratitude then?
I was just grateful to be alive.
Yeah. So a big thing happened in your life, and therefore you started to be grateful just to be alive. And I know we say just to be alive, but that's where gratitude has to start somewhere, doesn't it? And people don't get that. Like, that's what we try and say. Be grateful that you've got that air in your lungs, because some people didn't wake up this morning. So that's where we start, isn't it?
Absolutely, and removing yourself from comparing yourself to other people, what other people have got, where other people are at, the joy they're experiencing, come back to the basics, isn't it? And I think also looking back, you can probably say everything you needed at the time was supplied to you, your hospital treatment, the support from your father, the offer of somewhere to live from a friend. And so as we journey through life and we look back, we think, actually, at the critical moment, I was given what I needed. And therefore, as I move on, I don't need to be in fear, because I will also be given what I'm needed in the future. When I'm worried about something, I don't need to partner with fear. I can step into being thankful for what I've got already.
So obviously you've got your place to stay, and you've been living there for a few years, which is great, and it's really handy. But what else are you grateful for in life?
But at the very beginning, I had the car crash, and I was just grateful that I lived in New Zealand. If I had the car crash in another country, I would be on my own.
Absolutely.
ACUT has been marvellous.
And ACC, for our listeners that are overseas and don't know what ACC is, what is ACC?
And they accident. Christine, do you know?
It is an insurance policy for medicine, is it, for health? So that when we have an accident in New Zealand, we're covered and it's paid for. So you were really grateful that you didn't have to pay that. In America, you'd have to have private insurance, wouldn't you? So you were really grateful that that was paid for, that care was paid for.
Yeah, all my care, my ABI rehab, all of my rehab was covered by ACC. And then, all covered.
And I think for teenagers listening and people that are in a place of suffering or struggle or facing adversity and conflict, it's looking for the little things that we might take for granted, isn't it? Being grateful for. And certainly, did you find as well there were other people other than your father that came into your life that were quite significant in terms of your positive healing recovery?
Yeah. One of my friends, he came in, and my dad said, "Do you know who this is?" Thinking that I had forgotten because I had a brain injury. And then I said, "Yeah, Leon." And he was like, "Oh, she remembers you."
And obviously relationships and friendships are really important when we're going through a critical time, aren't they? I think that's one thing we were all born for connection. We were all born to have people around us. And you clearly have got that around you. And I'm sure you've inspired so many more people to come into your life that you wouldn't have met. Tell us about that as well.
Yeah, but I also, I just finished rehab, then I just finished rehab and lived at home and all settled, and Dad moved to Tauranga to start a new life, which was fine because he'd taken 2 years off work to support me. And then, so I had to go through those 2 years alone, which was so hard.
So you lived in Auckland on your own for 2 years. Was that before you moved in with your friend?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then and then I had a driveway that I couldn't go out of the house. It was too steep. And ACC kindly funded for it to be a rail from the east. It was like How long was it? Like a kilometre? No, not a kilometre.
But ACC paid to have that changed for you.
So steep.
So you could get in and out your driveway.
Yeah. And I walked up it 20 times every night just to improve the quality of my life. And look at me now, I did it.
And you say you're cycling on the beach. Tell us where you cycle and what you're doing.
Every beach in Auckland, I've been there.
And I did see the other day you falling off your bike,
Yeah.
which was also quite amusing, only because you're okay.
It was so funny. I was like, up, and then down.
So you don't really let anything hold you back, do you?
No.
So you just told us that you used to walk up and down your really steep driveway because ACC put in a handrail, so you walked up 20 times because you had a determination to make life better.
To be able to leave my property.
Absolutely. So, and even now, you know, people told you that perhaps you shouldn't ride a bike, but you were absolutely determined that you wanted to ride a bike.
Oh, that was so funny. My neurologist, she said I should put training wheels on. And because she was worried about the balance.
Yeah.
And I went home and told my friend, and he said, "No way, you're going to ride it." And so I did.
Good.
And that's awesome to have other positive people around, isn't it, to inspire us on our journey. Because I was just thinking, when something major happens to us and we come on that journey of recovery, it's not as though one day we suddenly recovered and have this amazing life. There's still highs and lows and ups and downs, aren't there, in life? And you must have days now where you struggle or feel low or things frustrate you. Or do you just have perfect days?
Yeah, I think my life is totally on point.
What a lovely place to be. I think we all need more of that, don't we?
Everybody needs more
We have
of
it on
that.
tap, yes.
I think people forget how lucky they actually are. You know, if you've got shelter, warmth, a bit of love, you know, running water, you're really, really flipping lucky, and people forget that.
I really couldn't be in a better place.
But you know, think back. So if somebody would have told you when you were 20 and you were suffering from bulimia, if somebody would have said to you, "You're going to have an accident next year and you're going to have to relearn everything and you're not going to be as physically able as you once were and you're going to need some help," would you have thought that would have made you happy? If somebody would have told you that story about your life in the future, could you go, "Oh yeah, that's going to really be happy for me," or would it have been like, "That's not what I want"?
I don't think it would make me happy.
No, but look what's happened to you. And it's definitely a mindset, isn't it? Because you could have come out of the accident and gone, "Why has this happened to me? You know, oh my goodness, this is going to be so hard, this rehabilitation." But it's all about the mindset, isn't it? You had some determination. And look where you are now and how happy you are.
But I just, if I wanted to survive in Auckland, I needed to harden up.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think, you know, all of us that have been to a critical place in our life would never want to go back there, would never want to experience that again. And we can always say there were such amazing lessons in it for me. It's turned my life around. And Joe and I can say that from experiences we've had as well. And the people we've met on the podcast, extraordinary stories we've heard, is that lives get turned around for the better. But for our listeners that are in a really critical place and it's black and it's bleak and they can't see a way out, it's also important to recognise when you're in it, it's really tough. You must have had bleak days when you're actually in it. And, you know, you're wanting your arms and legs to do one thing and they weren't doing it. It must have been really tough. So for our listeners, we also want to acknowledge that what you're going through is to be in it and know that there is hope. But actually we acknowledge the pain you're in right now. It's not easy and it's not all roses, certainly when you're in that place, is it? It's a place of transformation.
But I think a common theme, and we've noticed this with everybody, I think a huge common theme is definitely gratitude. It definitely transforms lives, it definitely transforms mindsets, and it doesn't have to be complicated. You can start so small with gratitude, and in the end, this is what the message we always say, all those small things that you start off being grateful for are the big things in the end. You know, you can be grateful for a car and a house and a holiday, but they're so short-lived. Whereas when you're grateful for nature, when you're grateful just to have the air in your lungs, when you're grateful to have a cup of tea, they're not the short-lived things, are they? They're the big things in life.
And what we talked about earlier before you came onto the podcast too, Kelly, was Joe and I was saying, and it's also a choice, Everybody's got a choice, don't they? In their difficult circumstances they're facing. Do you choose gratitude? Do you choose to partner with fear or the fact that you're never going to get better and speak negative words over life? So we've all got choice as well in those circumstances, and I don't think it's necessarily true that it's the whole nature-nurture thing, some born positive, some born negative. But in a situation where it's been critical or there's adversity and conflict right now and suffering, we've got a choice to partner with positivity and look for the hope and find, even if you're in a situation right now listening where there seems to be no hope, keep looking for it. Surround yourself with people that can inspire you on. When you feel too weak to carry on yourself, rely on your family and friends that will hold you in it and encourage you in it and partner with their positivity.
And we were talking before about sharing stories, because you spoke to me about like there's other other people who have been victims of accidents and they don't want to share their story, do they? Whereas you're happy to go out and share your story. And do you find by continuously sharing your story it actually heals everything you've been through as well?
Yeah, I think so. But I'm at a place where I don't really give a monkey's.
But it's taken you a while to get there, but good. It's so nice that you are there.
Yeah.
And our podcast is all about story, and we've all got a story, and our stories always will help somebody else, won't they?
Well, Kelly, we are so grateful for you coming onto the podcast today and sharing what was a horrific experience and your journey through healing, both physically and mentally, psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, to the place that you're at right now. We're thrilled to see you thriving in life. I'm going to be looking out on the beaches for Kelly cycling by.
Yeah, but can I just say that it was a lot of my dad's help, positivity.
Of course you can. Because we all need that in our life. We all need that one ray of sunshine, don't we? And your dad sounds like an absolute champion.
He is.
Is he still a champion to this day? You go down and see him.
Still a champion.
Oh.
Yes.
So what is his name, Kelly?
Steve Munford.
So Steve, when you're listening to the podcast, thank you for the support you've given Kelly. Obviously such an inspiration in her life. And to all the mums and dads out there that encourage their children on, you're much needed.
Always be a ray of sunshine in somebody's life.
Yeah.
You don't know what they're going through. Yes, well, thanks to Steve and thanks to Christine. Christine's here, your lovely driver, carer, who helps you around. So are you going to the beach now?
She's my ride.
Are you going to the beach now? Yeah.
I got my bikini.
She's got a bikini. It's summer here in New Zealand. It's January. It's boiling hot. Oh, it's February, sorry. We've lost a month.
It's snowing in England.
It's snowing in England, so you can all be jealous while Kelly goes off to ride her bike on the beach.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Welcome.
Thanks so much for being with us today. For us to inspire others to live their magnificently imperfect life, please subscribe and leave us a 5-star review on iTunes or on your podcast app. You can also follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Pods with Posh and Pool. We can't wait for you to join us on our next episode. Love, light and peace.